Welcome back. Well, we just recapped the past 5 years of the South Dakota State football rivalry, and now to chat a little more about this in-state matchup and look ahead to Saturday, I'm joined by our own Jay Elsen and Tom Nieman in studio. Always look forward to these things, but Saturday, the sixth time that these two teams have met up as FCS opponents. South Dakota State, well, they own the whole series right now, but they owned the first three handily. But these last two matchups have been pretty close, haven't they, Tom?
Yeah, you've kind of seen South Dakota State went first in the Division I process, got into FCS football a little early, and it's kind of followed that pattern. And since they started playing each other again in 2012, South Dakota State in those first three matchups won by a combined total of 95-34. And then in the last two seasons, Jay, it's kind of turned around here where the Coyotes have caught up, and you've really thought in these last 2 years, maybe the Yotes were going to break through and get it done.
Yeah, they kind of been, kind of pushing it a little bit against South Dakota State. And it kind of mirrored in that way the series with North Dakota State. You saw how big of a discrepancy there was between those two programs when that series first resumed. And then the Coyotes closed that gap enough to the point where they actually won a game against the Bison in 2015. Have not been able to get over that hump against the Jackrabbits for a number of reasons. But there have been some positive signs, certainly the last couple of years, going into the fourth quarter of the last two matchups with a chance to win the ball game. And, I guess at this point, that's all you really can ask for. You just got to find a way to finish one.
Yeah, the game there in 2013 we were just taking a look at was close going into the fourth quarter. You saw Kevin Earl go to Terrence Terry there for a touchdown. South Dakota State led that game 13-12 going into the fourth, and then it was a comeback by South Dakota State to come back and win that game 27-12. There was a pick six there by Winston Wright, who took it back 82 yards. That's kind of been the theme in those two games, in Vermillion especially, is a fourth quarter comeback by South Dakota State.
Well, and the Coyotes have not beaten the Jacks in Vermillion since 1997. 20-year anniversary going on this weekend. But like you talked about, Tom, 2013 and 2015, very close games, even though the 2013 one was kind of a bigger gap.
Yeah, and especially 2015. Let's take a look at that if we've got some highlights here where South Dakota State, again, got into a hole. The Coyotes led this game 20-10 going into the fourth quarter, and they had Ryan Sager at quarterback, had Mike Frederick. Mike Frederick had a big game on the ground with 143 yards, but South Dakota led 20-10, again, going into the fourth quarter here, Jay, but the fourth quarter had some nuts to it. Zach Lujan came in and led the Jackrabbits on two scoring drives, made it 20-17. They got a couple of Kyle Paris touchdown runs to make it 24-20. Lujan had not played. He'd been beaten out for the starting job by Taryn Christian. So he's on the phone there. They call him up, say, coming in the fourth quarter, and he starts hooking up with Dallas Goddard and Jake Wienicke. He didn't throw for a touchdown, but he set up two long touchdown drives, and the Jackrabbits got the lead down.
But what do? You go to your weapons, right? And that's exactly what the Jackrabbits did down the stretch of that game. Lujan played outstanding. It really was the savior because in 2013, it felt like the Coyotes could have won. In 2015, it felt, to a lot of people, me included, like the Coyotes probably should have won. Yeah. And Zach Lujan was a major reason that they did not. Kyle Paris with a couple of touchdowns. And then again, a fourth quarter pick six ended up helping create the difference in this football game. So what do we say all the time? You get into these big matchups, you can't turn the ball over, and the Coyotes have done it each of the last two times in their place, and it's cost them a football game.
Yeah, Winston Wright in 2013, Nick Farina did it 2 years ago in Vermillion. And then we haven't even talked really about the game last year in Brookings, which was oh so close. You went through that in the first segment here, Kelly, but it was tied at 7, tied at 14, tied at 21. South Dakota State pulls it out and wins it 28-21 last year in Brookings.
That was the theme of the year for the Coyotes. They had a whole bunch of one-score losses, 4 straight to end the regular season last year. It's just a team that was close all year, and this was just another example of that. Chris Streveler had a pretty good day. He throws a couple of touchdown passes. That one to Dakari Allen. But Taryn Christian and the Jacks really hurt the Coyotes on the ground in this football game. Christian, as you see right there, and then also Brady Mangarelli had 160 yards on the ground as well. So coming into this year's matchups, you can't help but look at that rushing statistic as we get set for Saturday.
Yeah, 415 yards rushing for South Dakota State last year in that game. And there wasn't a pick six, but there was an interception late in the ball game. Dallas Brown for South Dakota State that kind of sealed it when SDSU had that lead. So I would expect nothing less than a touchdown separating it either way going into the fourth quarter.
Turnovers at critical junctures in those games. It's been a really common theme, one you can't really argue with at this point.
Well, looking to this Saturday, guys, I mean, at the beginning of the season when USD was absolutely rolling and everyone's still like, oh, that rivalry game at the end of the season, now the Jacks maybe don't have the upper hand, but now Going into this one, USD losing 3 out of their last 4. The Jacks are rolling. Plus playoff potential. I know Jay and I were down in Vermillion last night, and everyone's like, what if they win, or is it a first-round bye? So what do you guys think is the situation? Let's kind of go through it, win or loss. If USD wins, Jay, what do you think it determines for the playoffs?
If USD wins this football game, they are in the playoffs absolutely, without question. I think they basically take the decision away from the committee because I think their resume is already pretty good. And if they lose, things get a little more questionable, and I think we still have to look at what happens in Normal, Illinois on Saturday between North Dakota State and Illinois State. If that scenario plays out, if they lose that game, they finish 7-4. Illinois State wins, they finish 7-4. Suddenly, things are a little less clear on exactly how that's going to play out. Some credible people that I've talked to in the last couple of weeks think that USD, even though they did not win that head-to-head matchup with Illinois State, still might have the inside track because of the FBS win. But who's to say,
I don't know.
Who's to say?
Yes, and NDSU can take care of a lot of problems by just beating Illinois State and knocking them out of there, and then we've got a pretty clear playoff picture. But South Dakota State, on the other hand, 8 wins right now. If they would get by USD this coming Saturday, 9 wins gets them, you got to believe, for sure, a top 8 bye, if not a top 5 seed in the FCS playoffs. So the Jacks, again, with 8 wins already, they are in, but they don't want to play in that first round. They want to sit home and get a bye. So, playoff implications both ways. Going to be really interesting, though, if USD comes out on the short end here, how it's going to shake out on Sunday when they select the playoff.
How crazy is that? Because we can go a couple of different directions here. USD could end up missing the playoffs altogether if they don't win. We don't know. If they win, there's even some talk that if they win this game, they could vault themselves into contention for one of those top 8 seeds. So those are 2 pretty big extremes we're talking about that are all going to be settled on Saturday, and that makes certainly for some good theater down in Vermillion.
Exactly. A lot of things going on, but for sure, I know the Coyotes don't want to put this one in the hands of the committee, but a very tough Jackrabbit team coming in, and all 3 of us will be on the broadcast on Saturday. Tom and I on the set hosting the pregame, halftime, and postgame show. That begins at 1:30, and then Jay Elsen and Andre Fields on the call for that game. Kickoff 2 p.m. from the Dakota Dome. So thanks so much, guys.
You bet.
Thanks, Dave.
All right, well, coming up after the break, we switch gears to the hardwood, actually, where Jason Andera previews the South Dakota High School State Volleyball Tournament. Stay tuned.
Midco Sports Tonight, presented by Avera Orthopedics.